I never expected a hug to feel like that. Not from her. Not from my neighbor, the woman who always carried herself like nothing could touch her, even after the kind of heartbreak that would flatten anyone else. Her name was Elena. 45, recently divorced, but there was nothing broken about her. If anything, she seemed sharper now, more alive in ways I couldn't explain. Every movement was deliberate, like when she smoothed her dark hair back, or when she tilted her glass of wine and her eyes caught mine across the porch. And me? I was 23, hardly someone who belonged in her orbit. At least, that's what I kept telling myself every time I found another excuse to help carry in her groceries or fix something small around her house. But the truth was, I noticed everything. The way her voice lingered in my chest longer than it should have. The way she stood a little too close when we talked. The way silence between us was never just silence. That night started simply. A knock on my door, soft but insistent. When I opened it, she was standing there in a thin sweater, her arms folded tight around herself. She didn't look broken, but she didn't look invincible either. "Do you mind if I—" she began, but stopped. Her lips pressed together, as if she hated needing anything. I stepped aside without a word, and she came in. The air shifted immediately, her perfume, faint but warm, wrapped around me like heat rising from a candle. She didn't sit. She didn't explain. She just stood there, eyes darting between the floor and me. Then she whispered it, barely audible. "Just hug me." I froze. Not because I didn't want to, but because the request felt heavier than it should have. A hug? That was all. Yet my pulse hammered as if she had asked me for something forbidden. When I finally stepped forward, her body fit against mine in a way that startled me. She was warm, softer than I expected, her cheek pressing into my shoulder. I thought she might pull away after a second, out of politeness. But she didn't. Her hands, tentative at first, slid across my back. I felt her exhale, slow and trembling, and then, she made a sound. Not a sob. Not a laugh. Something in between, something caught deep in her throat. "More!" she breathed, almost against my neck. "Don't stop." The words sank into me before I could think. My arms tightened around her, not out of decision but instinct. Her fingers curled in the fabric of my shirt. My head tilted just enough to catch the scent of her hair, warm vanilla with a trace of smoke from the porch earlier. We stayed like that, too long to be innocent. My heart raced against her chest. I knew she could feel it. She didn't move. I didn't either. When she finally leaned back, just slightly, her eyes found mine. Close enough that I could see the flecks of green in her irises, close enough that her breath still touched my lips. Either of us spoke. Her gaze dropped once, then flicked back up, like she was fighting something inside herself. My hand was still on her waist. Hers still gripped my shirt. Then, the sound of a car door slamming outside. She blinked, pulled in a sharp breath, and stepped back. Too quickly. The air between us snapped like a string pulled too tight. "Sorry," she murmured, brushing past me toward the door. I shouldn't have." But she didn't finish the sentence. She just looked at me once more, eyes unreadable, before opening the door to the night. And I stood there, shirt rumpled from her hands, pulse still racing, wondering what would happen the next time she knocked. The next time I saw Elena, she was on her porch in the late afternoon, wine glass in hand, her bare feet tucked beneath her. The sun was setting behind her, throwing her in a halo that didn't match the sharpness of her expression. "Come sit," she said when she saw me. Not a request, not quite a command. I crossed the short patch of grass between our houses and sat opposite her. She poured me a glass without asking if I wanted one. Her hand brushed mine as she passed it over, barely a second too long, but enough to remind me of the hug we hadn't talked about since. She sipped, then spoke without looking at me. "You know, I was married for 20 years. 20 years of routines. Safe choices. Silence at the dinner table. And then one day I realized I was lonelier with him than I was when he was gone." Her tone was light, but the way she clutched her glass gave her away. I shifted in my seat. "You don't have to tell me this, I know." She cut me off gently. "But I want to. It's easier with you." That caught me off guard. Why me? I wasn't the one she should be confiding in. I was just the kid next door who mowed his lawn too late at night. But her eyes flicked toward me, searching for something, and I didn't look away. She leaned back, the sweater slipping off one shoulder. My gaze followed before I could stop it. I tried to look away, but she noticed. Of course she noticed. A small smile tugged at her lips. "You're terrible at hiding things." Heat rushed to my face. "Sorry, I didn't mean, don't apologize." Her voice was softer now. "I like honesty." The silence stretched between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. She set her glass down and folded her arms over the railing, leaning closer to me. Close enough that I could feel her breath ghost over my skin when she spoke. "People would talk, you know," she murmured. "If they saw us like this. You're, what, 23? And me." She trailed off, the corner of her mouth curving with something between humor and regret. 45. I finished for her. Her eyes lingered on mine. "Too much of a difference." I swallowed. "Is it?" Her gaze dropped to my lips, then away just as quickly. "Depends who you ask." I could have leaned in then. I wanted to. The weight of the moment pressed against me like gravity. But instead I set my glass down beside hers. My hand rested near hers, not touching, just close enough that she could decide. She did. Her fingers shifted, brushing over mine, barely there but electric all the same. Neither of us pulled away. Her nails grazed the back of my hand, a delicate, lingering touch that said more than words ever could. We stayed like that, side by side, fingers almost entwined, the sun sinking lower as if it, too, wanted to stretch out the moment. It was late again when she knocked. This time, I didn't hesitate. Elena stood in the doorway with a folded blanket in her arms, an excuse ready on her lips. "Could you help me carry something from the garage? It's too heavy for me." I nodded, though I doubted it was really about the blanket or the box. Inside her garage, the air smelled of dust and faint cedar. She tugged at a taped carton, struggling more than necessary, until I stepped forward and lifted it easily. Our shoulders brushed. Too close in that small space. "See?" she said, smiling faintly. "You make it look like nothing." I set the box down, dusting my hands. But she didn't move away. Her sweater brushed my arm, her perfume clung to the dim air. "Elena!" My voice cracked, low, unsure. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, searching. "You don't have to say it." The silence stretched. I felt her hand twitch at her side, like she wanted to reach for me but thought better of it. I almost did the same. And then, footsteps outside. We froze. A man's voice, faint through the open garage door. "Elena? You here?" She inhaled sharply, then pressed closer, too close, her hand flat against my chest as if to keep me silent. My heart hammered against her palm. She felt it. Her lips parted just slightly, and for a breathless second, we weren't thinking about who was outside. The voice called again, closer now. "Just checking in." Elena leaned in, whispering. "Don't say a word." Her breath brushed my neck. I didn't. The footsteps retreated, finally. A car engine started, faded. Only then did she drop her hand, but not all the way. Her fingers lingered, dragging lightly against my shirt before falling. I exhaled. "Who was, doesn't matter." Her tone was sharp, but her eyes softened a moment later. "What matters is, we can't let anyone see." I wanted to argue, to tell her it wasn't wrong, but my throat tightened. Because maybe it was. A 23-year-old man and a woman twice my age. Neighbors. The kind of story people whisper about until it ruins both of them. Still, I couldn't stop looking at her. The dim light cut across her cheekbones, her lips parted like she wanted to say something but couldn't. I stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough that her sweater brushed my shirt. She didn't move back. Elena! I started again, but my words failed. Her hand lifted halfway, fingers grazing the air as if about to cup my face. At the last second, she faltered, pulling back with a sharp breath. We shouldn't. But she didn't step away. Neither did I. The garage was silent but for the sound of both our breathing, faster than it should have been. Her eyes locked with mine, heavy, unflinching, until the space between us was no longer space at all, just a thin, invisible line neither of us dared cross. It had rained that evening. The air outside was heavy, damp, carrying the smell of wet pavement. I found Elena on her porch again, sweater pulled tight, hair slightly undone from the humidity. She looked softer like that, unguarded, as if the weather itself had peeled away the armor she wore. You'll catch cold, I said, stepping closer. She gave a half-smile. You sound like someone twice your age. I laughed under my breath, but it came out tight. The space between us was charged, heavier than the air. We hadn't spoken about the garage, about the way her hand had stayed on my chest longer than it should have. Elena! I started, my throat dry. I can't keep pretending. Her eyes flashed sharp. Don't say it. Why not? My voice rose despite me. Because it's true? Her breath caught. She stood, suddenly closer, close enough that the damp sleeve of her sweater brushed my wrist. You don't know what you're asking for. I know what I want. The words hung between us, irreversible. Her lips parted, and for the first time, she didn't look away. She shook her head, but her body betrayed her. She leaned forward slightly, her hand brushing my arm as though she needed the contact to steady herself. I felt the warmth of her even through the wet fabric. This, you and me, it doesn't make sense, she whispered. I'm supposed to be past this. Past wanting like this. Her voice cracked. And then she whispered, almost to herself. But I can't stop. Something in me broke at that. I reached up slowly, my hand trembling as I tucked a loose strand of damp hair behind her ear. She didn't move. Her breath hitched as my fingers grazed her skin, lingering just a moment too long along her jaw. Elena! My voice dropped, husky, barely more than a whisper. She closed her eyes for a second, and when she opened them again, they were shining, wide, vulnerable. She stepped forward, her chest brushing mine. You don't know how dangerous this is, she murmured, but her hands betrayed her words, fingers curling into my shirt, pulling me just a fraction closer. I don't care. My answer came out rough, unsteady. Do you? Her silence was louder than any confession. Her lips hovered near mine, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath, the trembling hesitation. For one suspended heartbeat, the world stopped. The rain, the street, everything faded until there was only her hands in my shirt, my hands still at her face. Then, she whispered, almost against my mouth. If I let this happen, there's no turning back. The words shook me, but I didn't pull away. Neither did she. And in that suspended second, we hovered on the edge of something that would undo us both. The night after our almost kiss, I found a note slipped under my door. Just 4 words, scribbled in her neat, impatient handwriting, we need to talk. Her porch light was already on when I walked over, the rain from earlier leaving the wood slick and shining. She was waiting, arms folded, pacing like she'd been rehearsing something. Elena, I began. She held up a hand. Before you say anything, you should know, my sister came by earlier. She asked me about you. I froze. Me? She nodded, sharp and uneasy. She said she saw us. In the garage. Her voice broke slightly. She thinks something's going on. My stomach tightened. The garage, the footsteps. It hadn't been some neighbor checking in. It had been her family. She asked if it was true. Elena went on, her eyes flashing, restless. And I didn't know what to say. She pressed a hand to her temple, pacing again. I told her no. That it was nothing. That you're just the kid next door who helps with groceries. The words cut sharper than she meant them to. I felt my chest hollow, but I stayed quiet. When she finally looked up, her eyes softened with guilt. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. What else could I say? Silence stretched. My throat felt dry. My hands tightened at my sides before I finally whispered, So I'm just the kid next door. Her expression faltered. She stepped closer, quick, almost desperate. No. You're not. You know you're not. Her fingers brushed my arm as if to hold me there, trembling just slightly. I should have stepped back, but instead I leaned in, caught between anger and desire. The space between us charged again, hotter this time, sharper. She dropped her hand, pressing it flat to my chest instead, the same way she had in the garage. Her eyes burned into mine. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is for me? I caught her wrist, holding it there against my chest, my heartbeat racing beneath her palm. Do you have any idea how hard it is to stop? Her breath shook, her body leaning forward despite herself. You weren't supposed to matter this much. Something in me cracked then. I stepped closer, my forehead nearly brushing hers. My free hand hovered at her waist, not touching, just trembling with the need to. Elena, I whispered. Her lips parted, breath shallow. For one long, unbearable second, the world held its breath with us. Then she pulled in a ragged whisper, eyes closing. If I let this happen, I lose the lie. I lose the excuse. And maybe I lose myself. But she didn't step away. Her hand still rested against my chest. My grip still held her wrist there. And in the silence that followed, it was clear, either of us could go back to pretending. The night was too quiet. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath as I stood in Elena's doorway, waiting for her to either let me in or shut me out for good. She didn't do either. Instead, she whispered, Come inside, and stepped back. Her living room was dim, lit only by the glow of a single lamp. The rain had started again, pattering soft against the windows. She stood near the couch, arms wrapped around herself like armor. But her eyes, they betrayed her. Elena, I said, my voice low, breaking the silence. We can't keep stopping halfway. Her throat tightened. You think I don't know that? I stepped closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. Her breath caught, shallow, uneven. You keep saying we shouldn't, I murmured. But you never let go either. Her eyes flicked up to mine, wide, conflicted, as if she wanted me to take the decision from her. My hand rose almost on its own, brushing a strand of hair back from her damp cheek. She closed her eyes at the touch, leaning into it without meaning to. God, she whispered, almost trembling. You make me feel like I'm 20 again. I swallowed hard, my thumb grazing her jawline. And you make me forget I'm supposed to be careful. We stood like that, barely moving, the air buzzing between us. My hand slid to the back of her neck, slow, deliberate. Her fingers found the edge of my shirt, twisting in the fabric like she needed the anchor. You realize, she whispered, her lips so close I could feel the heat of them. Once this happens, there's no pretending it didn't. I don't want to pretend anymore. Her breath hitched. For a suspended moment, neither of us moved. Her hand trembled against my chest. My forehead brushed hers. And then, finally, she closed the distance. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, a release of everything we'd been holding back. Her mouth found mine, warm and urgent, her hands clutching me as if afraid I'd disappear. I pulled her closer, the line between restraint and surrender breaking all at once. The kiss deepened, messy and real, breaths catching, hands grasping without thought. She tasted like wine and rain. Every second carried the weight of weeks of denial, of secrets pressed too tight inside. When we finally broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, both of us breathless. She laughed softly, shaky, almost disbelieving. I told myself this couldn't happen. And yet, my voice was rough, still tangled in the moment. She drew back just enough to meet my eyes. No more walls, no more excuses. And yet here we are. The choice was made. Not perfect, not safe, but ours, The storm had passed by morning. The air was fresh, cool, carrying the smell of wet grass. Sunlight filtered in through Elena's curtains, casting soft lines across her living room where we sat, still close, still wrapped in the quiet aftermath of the night before. Neither of us had said much. Words felt too heavy, too sharp, like they might shatter what had finally settled between us. Instead, we let silence do the talking, the kind of silence that wasn't empty anymore, but full. She shifted beside me on the couch, tucking her legs under her. Her sweater slipped down her shoulder, and without thinking, I reached over and pulled it gently back into place. My fingers lingered a second longer than necessary. She noticed. She always noticed. "You know," she said softly, not quite looking at me. "I spent weeks convincing myself this could never happen. That it was reckless. That I'd get hurt. That you'd regret it." Her voice faltered, but then she met my eyes. "But last night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid." Something in my chest eased at her words. I leaned back, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "I don't regret it," I said quietly. "Not for a second." She smiled, faint but real. Her hand slid across the cushion, stopping just shy of mine. I closed the distance, threading my fingers through hers. Her skin was warm, soft, grounding. The world outside felt far away. The age gap, the neighbors, the whispers, it all existed, yes, but in that moment it didn't matter. What mattered was the way her thumb brushed across my knuckles absent-mindedly, the way her body leaned just slightly into mine, as if it finally belonged there. "I keep thinking people will judge," she admitted after a pause. 45 and 23. "They'll say I should know better. They'll say you're too young." I squeezed her hand. "They don't know us. They don't know what this is." Her eyes softened at that. Slowly, carefully, she leaned closer, her forehead resting against mine. It wasn't a kiss, it was gentler, deeper somehow. A silent promise. We stayed like that, breathing in sync, the warmth of her body pressed to my side. When she finally whispered, it was so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "Stay." One word, small and trembling, but it held everything. I tightened my grip on her hand. "I wasn't planning on leaving." She let out a shaky laugh, half relief, half joy, and pulled me into her arms. This hug wasn't tentative, not like the first. It was certain. Solid. The kind of embrace that didn't ask for more, because it already had enough. The fear, the doubt, the hesitation, they were still there, somewhere in the background. But they no longer defined us. What defined us was this: two people, flawed and human, choosing each other anyway. And for the first time, it felt enough. Speech Balloon, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?